Hello, everybody. I'm not going to jump right into it because I know sometimes there's a delay with going live. But how is everyone doing this Saturday morning? So I want to do some housekeeping before we just jump into it. First off, in the description for the video, there's a link to my buddy Jason Alexander's Etsy page, his shop, where he's selling his first comic that he wrote and drew all himself, Ransom Notes. I would encourage you to support this guy and go check it out. I just bought my copy just before I came here. Like I said, link in the description. It's 15 bucks, which you should know. Like, I know, I don't know. Some people have a weird idea about pricing. 15 bucks for something of that, the length that his is, with the amount of work that's into it, printed and all that stuff. He's shipping for free. That's a steal. He's a great guy. He's an interesting creator. It's worth it. I'm very excited that he's been working on this for a while and it's out, and I'm real excited to read it. And I think you guys should check it out too. So consider at least going by there and taking a peek at it, and maybe even dropping 15 bucks to support another great creator who's out there trying to do his own thing and not come up with his take on Batman. There's plenty of that. We don't need any more of that. There's one Batman's enough. Thank you. I'm sorry if you're doing your own take on Batman. I don't know. I'm sure it's awesome. Anyway, let's see what else. Okay. What I had intended to do today and did not was because I was busy, which we'll be coming back to. I intended to have some new kind of overlays or graphics just to give this some sort of a visually identifiable thing, and just didn't get to it. So I'm going on record now. I'm making myself accountable. Next Saturday, there should be maybe some visual interest, like in the whole Always Workin Squatch live streams. So look forward to that. And what else? I think that's it. I'm going to talk about my goals for today, comic work wise. And then I had a little topic I just wanted to talk about a little bit, and then we'll see if anybody wants to pop on or if anybody's in chats or whatever, but I'm going to get those out of the way. So in terms of comic work today, so this is sort of a good day and a bad day for comic work. The good part is I will be starting page 10, which is a nice morale boost. Double digits. We're up to double digits now with the pages. Feels good. Feels good, man. So I've got again, you've seen this, my little cheat sheet here to show my panel layouts. I know exactly what I'm doing with my panels. I know I got to go and pull my reference images together, and I have an Excel document that has all my dialogue. Same thing I've been doing every Saturday. So that's what I'll be doing first, is setting up page 10. But then once page 10 is set up and ready to go, I got my panels laid out, I got my little page number updated, I got the file all saved and ready to go, I got all my assets kind of spread out so I can look at them while I'm working. Rather than go right into drawing page 10, I have to backtrack. And this is the confession part. So I'm going to, again, you know me, I'm very protective about spoilers, and I like to very carefully and thoughtfully drip out knowledge and information about the next comic. So someone's going to freeze frame that. The video quality is not great anyway. It's not going to help you. Anyway, this is page 9. Page 9 is not done. Just, I went to Catholic school as a kid. Confession is very important. It's not done. I'm not happy about it. Frankly, like this kind of stuff pisses me off. Like, because the only rule I have for my process is basically like new page every Saturday morning. Well, it's not. I'm not quite ready to move on. I'm going to do it out of just like, that's the routine, new page Saturday morning. But then as soon as I get the new page set up, I got to circle back and I've got to spend, I would guess, an hour or two finishing page 9. And then now behind an hour or two, then I'm going to start on page 10. This is not unusual. Even though I talk all the time, page a week, page a week, page a week, with both D versus M 1975 and D versus M 1997. This happens, like, you know, life happens. It was a busy week. My work has been weirdly busy the past couple weeks, and that's part of what's just kind of zapped me and made me not as productive as I like to be. For those who maybe are new here or unfamiliar, so I'm a litigation graphics specialist. That's my day job. Basically, I make visual aids for use in court, like criminal trials. During pandemic, just like the rest, unfortunately, people were still out there murdering each other and raping each other and beating their kids, but trials were slowed down because it was risky to get a jury together in the same room during the plague. So now everything, knock on wood, is sort of coming back, which means all these criminal trials are going, which all of a sudden, like, I'm just kind of scrambling at work. And on top of that, last week I had to actually testify in court for the first time. I've been interviewed by defense attorneys before. I've been put on witness list before, like I may have to testify. This was the first time I actually had to go up and raise my right hand and sit on the stand and talk about a case. So I've just been, but that's just part of it. And you gotta just figure out how to manage it. There was sort of one of the nice things about pandemic was it was kind of easy to get my work done. Now the world is coming back online, and I'm just gonna have to readjust to that new reality of being productive and getting my page a week done while also being busy with day job. It's very doable. I'm just a little out of practice. So I slipped behind a few hours. Okay, so that's the plan today. Set up page 10, backtrack to finish page 9, and then proceed with page 10. The last item on my to-do list, while I start getting my page going. Chase, how's it going, man? Josh, good to see you here. We got AGMD. I don't know who Brightside is, but hello, everybody. I'm glad you're here. And like I said, if somebody wants to pop in once I get done with my little rants, I will distribute some links. So let me get my Illustrator open and get my panel set up while I talk about the next thing. I was just updating all my Adobe products. I had like 9 updates to install. And now, let's see here. Squatchy, I am actually totally working right now. Totally working. So, and all you're going to see me doing is working. I may be talking, but I'm working. So just pipe down. Squatch is going to be a future guest. Now, that's another like thing. I didn't plan to talk about this, but might as well throw it in. In terms of the vision for this stream, it's not going to be like last week there were guests. There might be guests this week. There might be guests the next few weeks. And that's what made me think of it is like, I want to have Squatchy himself on, especially for those of you on in my world who have not had the pleasure of meeting a Bigfoot. But I expect as this goes on, that will not be the norm. I expect these will typically just be me sort of bullshitting and looking at the chat and working and just coming up with whatever thing I want to talk about that week. It won't always, so it's not going to be like an interview show where like this week we have Emma Watson. It's not, it's usually going to be just be me. Probably fast forward 3 or 4 months, me being like, I'm fried, man. I'm fried. I don't know. I'm questioning this whole thing now. Why am I even doing this? Like, that's probably what it's going to be. It's going to be a very like angsty vlog. Most likely, it won't be angsty, but it could be. Let's see here. Okay. Let me, hold on. One of the first things I do in Illustrator, the Illustrator people will be familiar with this, is I go to view and view using CPU, because view using GPU is not as clear as I would like it to be, and it annoys me. So, all right, let's see here. Just as soon as I get this file renamed, I'll be able to talk and work at the same time. Save as, and here we go. Oh my gosh. Save as 1979 space 10. Page 10, guys. Feels good. Feels good. That's a chunk. And in terms of keeping myself motivated, 10 is a nice point where you can start breaking down, like in my head. Oh, okay. That much work is 10 pages. I only have to do that X number of more times and it'll be done. I mean, you just, these are the little games. If you start thinking about, like, I have to do, like, for example, DRSM 1997 was 59 pages. If by page 3 or 4, I was like, I only have to do 55 more pages, like, that's a good way to zap your morale. Like, not even just that, like, torpedo your morale. So you you try to think more of, like, I only have to do what I've done so far 4 more times, or whatever. Like, that makes it a lot more. It's all the mental game you're playing with yourself to keep from losing your. Let's see here. Okay, so the one other thing I wanted to talk about before I was going to check to see if anybody feels like popping on or if it'll just be the Carrie show today. So I've had a couple online conversations recently, which maybe you guys have even watched, like both on my show and on Artcasters or Josh's chat, or I don't even remember specifically where they were, but Squatch, they're not jazzercise weights, all right? Right, where here, that's not a jazzercise weight. Just settle the fuck down, all right? You just settle down. Do you want a new D versus M or not? See, now you're making me not work. I was in work mode, and now I'm talking to you about my weights. You see? You see? I think you need to think about your part in the whole constellation of is Gary working? See? Think about every time you point your finger at someone, 4 fingers are pointing right back at you, buddy. Okay, so what was I? See, now I've lost my track. Okay, so I've had a couple conversations recently about creatives, talent, being an artist, stuff like that. And in thinking, like reviewing them in my head, because as an introvert, one of my greatest skills is replaying interactions in my head over and over and over, and then getting concerned about them. I was concerned that it would come off like I was expressing or saying or feeling. Yeah, I guess it depends how your thumb is whatever. Yeah, the point still stands, Corey. I was afraid that it could come off as me saying that basically, in a very supremacist sort of way, artists are the best people. Creative people, talented creative people are the best people. And people who don't have, they're like, And that's not it at all. I don't see, in terms of like cosmic human value, a difference between Bruce Lee and an old woman practicing Tai Chi in the park. Like, it's not, I'm not doing like a value judgment on excellence. Okay. I think all I was suggesting when we were talking about things like this is I have a personal like taste preference to driven people who like swing for the fences. That's not a value thing. I'm not saying chocolate is better than vanilla. I'm just saying I like chocolate better. When I talk to I like relating to other creatives. I like talking about being an artist with other artists. And I'm inspired and motivated and impressed and admire people who are like pushing, who really want to excel. I'm impressed and like invigorated by people who are pursuing mastery. I'm not saying they're better or worse. I'm not saying if it's like, you're going to a wine bar and you're repainting Starry Night with the girlfriends or whatever. That's not, I'm not like, ugh, like it's fine. Like it's not even just fine. That sounds dismissive. It's totally cool. Whatever. If it makes you happy, it's cool. But you get to decide who you surround yourself with and who you let influence you and who you respond to. And I respond to people who I feel are at least on a relatable path as me, where I'm not saying like, oh, I'm pursuing excellence. I guess I sort of am. I'm trying, but people who like that is an orientation where it's like, I want to see how far I can push something. I want to see how far I can stretch. I want to see how far I can grow. I want to try and do something the best I possibly can. And as a result, yes, sometimes I'll say things that comes off like, and people who aren't pushing, like that. And I know that can sound like these are the lesser people among us. And I don't mean it in that way. I just mean like, it's hard for me to relate to. I enjoy, it's like, I don't know, Jerry Seinfeld, you'll hear him talk all the time about like, I like to hang out with comedians, because that's his tribe. I think it's the same thing with me. So anyway, okay. So AGMD is saying like, no explanation needed. I think a lot of people totally understood where it was coming from. Maybe everybody did, but I felt like, just disclaimer, in case anyone out there, again, introvert replaying, did it come off? Did it seem like, do people think I'm saying this is the curse? Anyway, okay, now everything's out of the way. If anyone is interested in popping on to say hi, no obligation, let me know and I'll send you an invite. But otherwise, I'm going to start I have my page set up. I got my panel set up. The reason I was able to do the panel so quickly is when I look at this, very often it's a panel orientation that I've done before. And all I have to do is find a past page of D versus M and resit. Now, this is the important first step. Save as with a new name and then just delete everything on it. And that's like, look at that, my panels are set up, which is what I just did. So my panels are set up and now I just got to pull together my reference images. I won't make anyone jazzercise, and I won't bore people with my love of jazzercise if I bring you on. Let's see here. So I don't know if yeah, I did say it. Squatch is going to be on at some point. I would like to get the Crimson Owl guys on at some point. I want to get the Making Comics podcast guys on at some point. And then I would like to get some like creatives unfamiliar to probably our immediate circle. And maybe even not even comic creatives, just like something I've been interested in, especially these past few years, sort of on topic of what I was talking about, is like, I like just talking to other artists, whatever they are, whether they're musicians or dancers or singers or photographers or writers or whatever, because I find it super There's so much in common with all of them. It's so relatable, and I do consider them part of like the large tribe. Not saying our tribe is best, but you know, it's nice to surround yourself with people that you recognize. And I think I would like to try pulling in like real random, like let's get some painters on, let's get some musicians on, let's do that. Indie cartoonists, let's see here. I haven't even read this yet. Hopefully I'm not throwing this up prematurely and Chase isn't being super offensive, but why would he be? Indie cartoonists do have a uniquely compulsive drive compared to, 100%. You have to, I don't know how you'd finish anything unless you're a little, and that's probably, actually, you know what? That's probably a big part of why that's attractive to me is, you know, you're not making money in this. There has to be a kind of a neurotic, obsessive, motivating vim in you. I don't know if that's the correct use of the word. That, you know, is nice to see in other people, but for the familiarity. I think that's what we're all looking for, right? We're all looking for connection. I've talked about this in a past video that one of the kind of mysteries, I think, of, I'm sharing the link. One of the mysteries of this whole thing is, you know, I find when you're doing personal work, which D versus M is, it's a very individual, let's see here. Chase, yeah, that's a good question. Are you not on Facebook? I lost my train of thought. I got distracted thinking about how to invite Chase. Oh, when you're doing personal work, it's a very inward process. You know, you're thinking about what you're trying to say and how you want to do it, and you're trying to make the process clean and enjoyable and satisfying and fulfilling for you, and you're trying, you know, it's all very personal with this ultimate goal of I'm going to put it out there and people are going to see it and feel seen. Like there's some, they'll relate to it in, and maybe in a way you didn't even imagine, but they'll relate to it in a very personal way, in an individual way. They'll feel a connection to you. And that's sort of the, I think that's the difference between just being a creative who never shows their stuff to anybody, who just like paints things and then burns the canvas or slashes the canvas or something, and people who do ultimately put things out, is you're trying to make some kind of a connection there. You're trying to communicate in some way. You're trying to, again, I think, find tribe. And I find that kind of interesting, but okay, let's see.
How's it going?
It's Mr. Kemble.
All right.
First off, have you ever tried jazzercise? Have you ever...
You know, I okay. This is that leads to a funny story. I don't want it to take too long though. I had a friend who's in high school. We were in a band with these guys, and the drummer and the guitarist were in the same family. And their mom used to do Sweatin' to the Oldies like almost every morning. And so we used to kind of goof on her and just like stand
next to her. That's what I'm using
them
for, sweating to the oldies. That's...
Yeah. Anyhow, so we used to goof on her and like we'd put on like crazy outfits and like do like jazzercise right next to her. It was awesome. Anyhow.
Nice. Yeah. I'm going to try, let's see here. I'm going to try and send Chase a link through Instagram, which is the only place I am connected to him. So hold on just 1 second while I type this nonsense link. How are you doing? What's going on with you?
It's just busy, man.
Yeah.
It's so I don't know if you caught the Gold Key episode where I
I did.
hustled your wares
I
that
did. I
day.
saw that. Yeah. I didn't even know. I was very flattered
Well,
that
I don't know if they would fit or even be of interest to you, but I just like instantly when I was thinking about people we know and Gold Key, I was like, yeah, you guys
yeah, I mean,
you
at
guys got to
least
connect.
that, it is kind of like that's sort of like a weird dream, like when you think about like, or if they brought EC back or something, it'd
Yeah.
be like, oh, that would be, I'm definitely gonna like seek them out at
Okay.
Fan
Yeah, I would
Fusion
hit them up if I were you. Definitely look at the contract, make sure it's, it's
for
good and
sure.
stuff.
And I
But
just have a lot of questions. I mean,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it sounds like it's very like the dust hasn't even settled yet. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of like, still a lot of like, what are we going to do with this? And like, so I kind of, that's why I think Fan Fusion, which will be in a month and a half or
Yeah.
something, maybe
Yeah.
there'll be a little more clarity about, what the plan is,
Yeah.
what they're after.
Yeah, I just think about it because it's like they're probably going to get pretty decent distribution, and just instantly made me think of your thing. But what was funny was like so I was on that and just like a window into like some of the changes that have happened in the last like year. It's like they were saying like, oh, and you should show some stuff too. And it's like in the past, if I had an in with a publisher like that, I'd be like on it.
Yeah.
And it's the first time in my life where I just can't.
You just can't. Yeah.
And I don't know. It felt like this moment of like reflection. I don't know. It felt profound at the time because I was like, it's interesting how much difference like when you stay in the game, you start becoming the thing that you wanted to be, but like it doesn't happen the way you expect. Like where it's like I'm slammed doing graphic novel pages for a publisher, and that's where I wanted to be. But it's like it's weird when you're in the reality of it because it feels very normal. But it's
Yeah.
like it's really strange. Just the difference of like a year has been like
Right.
insane. Yeah. So anyhow,
Well,
so that's been on my mind. Like
it's,
that was a weird moment, you know?
it was actually in a different way. It was a weird moment for me because I think there might have been times in this process where if somebody told me like, hey, you might be able to like gold, first of all, just a crazy idea. Gold Key is coming back.
Yeah.
And then like, hey, maybe you'd be able to, get in with them. I can imagine a lot of times where I'd be like, just totally like, yes, that's
Yeah.
crazy. And it made me kind of, and this is, I can't get too much into it, not out of privacy, just so like I haven't really picked through the thoughts yet and figured out where they're coming from. But there's an element of not reluctance, but like pause to that.
Yeah,
Where
of
it's like,
course.
I don't know, is that what I want? And that surprised me. Like that reaction where I was like, I don't know. I don't know if that's what I'm after. And so that's again like something I don't know, like it's worthy of further thought, I guess. Like
Yeah.
thinking about thinking about
Yeah.
what's going on.
100%. Yeah. But it's still an opportunity I think worth like at least checking out just because the aesthetic, like to me, when we had them on and they were expressing that they're interested in kind of keeping that aesthetic
Hmm.
of like painted pulpy covers and like the kind of mid-century modern vibe, I was like, okay, that if they do it right and they offer a fair, thing,
Yeah.
and they have decent distribution lined up like that, it's at least worth looking into. So I
Yeah,
hope I
no,
hope
for
you do, but
sure.
at the same time, if it's crap or whatever, don't take it. you know. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean I felt like they said all the right things.
Yeah, dude,
This is
for
the
sure.
other thing, and this is a story like when you had me and Chris Ward on,
Yeah.
um it was a story that Chris and I had talked
By the
about.
way, you guys need to watch that episode and check out Chris. Sorry,
It was
it's
a lot
just
of fun. Yeah,
that
he's
guy. Yeah, he's a legend.
yeah, it's pretty great. But there was a story like when we were talking beforehand, like, you know, what might come up, what would be fun stories to tell. We had, and this kind of gets into my baggage, but and I won't go into details because we might still tell the story on the air sometime, which is a pretty funny story. But there was a period when he and I were working together a lot, and we were getting some attention at, you know, Village Voice Media for our column.
Yeah.
There was this guy, he was like one of 18 producers on the Wolverine Origins movie or something, you know. And he gave us, just without spoiling too much, but just to give you a taste, give you a tease, like he was totally like just the coked out, obnoxious Hollywood producer type, you know.
Yeah.
And he was all like, you guys are going to be like the, you know, the bedrock of the new media empire I'm going to make, and we're going to do, it's going to be
very
crazy.
LA. Yeah.
And it was all this like, and it was I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I had that experience, because it made me like, I got to have my very own like bullshit promises that never come to anything story.
Yeah.
You know, and as a result, and I don't think it's an unhealthy cynicism or skepticism, but anytime I'm approached about like anything, I'm kind of like, we'll see.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it was because of that experience where it was like, you know, I've heard this song before, you know, and it's usually, not always, usually bullshit.
100%.
Like, it usually goes nowhere.
Yeah, and
I was talking about it with someone the other day. I don't even remember who. Forgive me if you know I'm talking about you. It was on Instagram or Facebook or something where, God, I wish I remember who it was. But you know, every con I go to, there's some guy who manifests at the table with his business card. Always. He asks a bunch of questions. Yeah. You know, he's like, so what you got going here? What's that? And he's looking, it's like, this is good work. This is good work. You know, we're looking for, and like, he's got this crazy, you know, thing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And the first time it happens, you're like, wow, no, that would be great. Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah. And like, and he takes your card and he gives you his and he shakes your hand. He's like, well, I'm going to be in touch. This is great. Good work. And you never fucking hear from this guy again. And like, so it's,
or you do, and it's like completely not what they sold. Like
completely different, or so limp and lame what they're actually offering, you know? Yeah. Or it's basically like they're looking for like free work, basically. Yep. So yeah, that happens 2 or 3 times, and it happens in freelancing too. Like, there'll be people who like won't pay. Like, you very quickly are like, it takes a while to get me excited about an opportunity. Like, I really need to feel like this is happening, you know? But
yeah, agreed. I'm the same way. It's funny, my sister and I just went through that, and it's her first, this book that I'm illustrating is like her first book. So it's like, she was very similar to you. Like, she wrote like for a newspaper for like, although for her it was like over a decade of like writing for this newspaper, and then working her way up to like senior editor of the entertainment section locally and stuff, and then kind of left that to like, you know, be a mom. And had this like pet project because she was obsessed with the Brownings and had poured all this research into it and stuff. I talk her into putting together a pitch, and like we send it out and get her represented too by my lit agent and stuff. And it's funny how tense like that whole process is, because once you've sent out pitches, you get tons of responses, some of which are like really promising and some of which aren't, and most of which will never come to fruition. And it's like this heartbreaking, tense process, because you know it's going out there, you're getting all the responses forwarded to you by your agent, and it's like there's just this tension like that. And most writers recommend that, like, when you're going through that submission process, you just have to have a project, because if you don't have a current project, you're going to go nuts. Like, you'll lose your mind. And So like up until we got the contract and the contract's like signed and cross signed, and even after that, up until I think the first meeting, because this isn't my first rodeo with it, it's not like I'm that seasoned in it. I mean, definitely the scenario you were talking about, I'm very seasoned in that because I live near LA. So you can't go to a coffee shop without meeting somebody who's got the idea that's going to change the world, or the startup company, or like they're the next big animation firm, or they
Yeah,
have the Oscar winning screenplay they're working on. Like
of
it's just
course.
very like that is Los Angeles. But
Yeah. Well,
but the
and
weird
by the way, Facebook as well.
yeah,
Like I see
oh
all the
totally.
time in these comic groups, like there's some guy when you chase down their profile, I'm not going to
Yeah.
name names, but you chase down their profile, they're acting like a big shot. They're looking for artists, they're looking for writers,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. You chase down their Facebook to kind of do your due diligence. And you can tell like what they did is they just have invented like 3 fake companies.
Yes.
I mean, I don't want to say fake, but like it's clearly a guy in a room somewhere who's probably working at a copy shop, you know,
Yeah.
and he's like, you know, this is the new, like this is Blazing Comics Media Empire, you know,
Yep.
and they set up the page on Facebook and now they're looking for people to do free work. You
Yep.
know, it's all just everyone has this idea they're going to be a mogul. But anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I love it. Also, it's something to be cautious of, right? Because I mean, you learn this in LA, but it's like people who aren't familiar with like hucksters and schemes. Like there's a lot of people do confidence scams related to like comics and like media promotion and stuff like that. And so it's like you have to be really careful with that too. That you're not like, you know, signing into like some confidence scam that's going to drain you of all your cash, you know, because a lot of cartoonists, like that's the thing, like we all want to have our work seen. We're all in this scenario where we're taking a big risk to like take the time and stuff to create our art. And it's like it's very possible that like, you know, sometimes like these people are not who they say they are and stuff like that. So it's like um but when it like the weird thing is, this is the catch 22 of it, is like also if you have a moment like of something like that where it's like a publisher you'd want to be published by, there's a lot of opportunity behind it, and they're saying like, hey, we want to see your stuff, you also like totally should be like next day, like
Yeah.
start drafting something up and contact them, because this is the other side of LA, is like the weird part about LA is you have all these people who are full of crap, and then you have that occasional guy who like stops by a coffee shop and is literally like one of the biggest movie producers in the world,
Yeah.
or they
Lightning
are
can
starting.
strike.
Yeah, and so it's like you have to kind of be willing to like take the opportunities when they come, like when there's a open door, it's like it's cracked, and when it actually, that the weird thing is not so much when like you find the scammers or like the people who are like kind of full of it or just blowing wind. The weird thing is when it's real, and then you're in it and you're like, oh my gosh, like this is actually happening. And like I said, it took a while for watching my sister go through that, because I've been through that a few times with like pitches and book deals and stuff. This will be my third one. So that went through, and it's like by the third time you're kind of used to, you get used to the rigmarole, like with a rep, right? Like I've done plenty of submissions before that, so even that, like it's like you kind of build up like a callus of what you were describing, Gary, where it's like,
Yeah.
dude, you know, I know this is not going to work out, but I have to give it a shot just in case. And then you prepare yourself. It's like almost like a preservation thing, right?
Yeah. I
um
mean, it's like I don't know. Maybe it's like going on a first date. Like you
yeah.
can't go in with a bunch of expectations. You
No,
know,
and
you
if
just
you look like you have a bunch of expectations or that you're desperate for it, then it's like then it doesn't work out either. Just like
yeah,
a date, you know, where it's
yeah,
like if you read desperation on a date, like that's the quickest way to not have it work. But yeah, so it was funny. What it was interesting, kind of watching my sister go through that process, like the roller coaster of it actually happening. Because the whole time you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. You're waiting for like, okay, they haven't sent the contract yet. This is where they're going to be like, you know, and your imposter syndrome kicks in really big too, where you're like, okay, this will be the point where they're just like, yeah, this isn't going to happen.
Yeah, this is where you find out you're not in the big leagues.
Yeah, and then when you're in negotiations, same thing, because you're like,
Yeah.
maybe I pushed a little too much. Maybe like maybe we're gonna like lose the contract because we're asking for these things, but we need these things, and it's like this long, tedious roller coaster. But when it works out, it's very surreal, and like I still don't believe it. Like with the book deals, like it's a weird thing, but it is doable. And that's my point, is like it's like you have to have realism, but somehow to I'm rambling, but it's like I think if you're going to do the game of publishing and books and stuff like that, you have to kind of keep realism but fight cynicism. And it's a hard thing to do because realism is slightly cynical. So it's like, how do you remain skeptical but at the like and keep that's like just evolutionarily like one of the most awesome things we have is skepticism.
Right.
But how do you keep that without getting totally cynical? It's a hard game. I don't know.
Yeah,
Anyhow, I'm
it's a
rambling.
balance. Yeah, it's definitely, because you don't want to be cynical.
No.
If you can help it. But skepticism, I think, is always pretty useful. But,
Yeah. Yeah, because this like the problem with cynicism is then you get the result that you're expecting. Like like if you much like dating, if you go into a date just being like, this girl's gonna hate me, like that, you know, there's no, I'm not interesting, like you're thinking all those things, then like at your and you're like actively kind of feeding those thoughts, it's like that date's not gonna go well. It's just
no,
not.
yeah.
You know,
You have to,
yeah, so it's like that weird, but if you go in and you're just totally unaware of your flaws and you're like overconfident and you're selling yourself like you're a billionaire and then they find out that you're full of it, like that's not going to go well either. So it's like this weird it's this weird balance of like self-awareness, skepticism, and then but anyhow, that's been on my mind. I'm sorry for rambling about it. It's just been on my mind.
Yeah.
Lately, because I'm like it's just weird that like the next 2 years are plotted out, like when I'm off work I have to be doing comics, and it's kind of like when we had oh my gosh, I'm Richard Fairgray, when we had
Yeah.
him on and he was talking about kind of describing to somebody what comics are like, and they're like, oh my gosh, that sounds like a nightmare, and he's like, are you kidding? That's like that's the dream. And I mean his interpretation, because it's Richard Fairgray, is like way more kind of over the top than probably the way I would approach making comics.
Right.
But it's still like I do feel what he's saying, because like I've talked to a few friends with this book, and I don't know if you have this too. I bet you do with Dinosaurs versus Marsbots, but it's like where I've been like, yeah, I'm not going to have any weekends for like the next like year. I just have to crunch like on this book for like pretty much every waking moment. And I've had friends that are like, that sounds like a nightmare. That sounds horrible. And I'm like, no, I'm a cartoonist. Like, that's what I want. Like,
Yeah,
I want that.
I think it's also, to me, I just, is his first name Jordan Peele, the guy who wrote like from Key and Peele and did Get
I think
Out?
so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I just saw a bit of an interview with him. He was speaking to some group somewhere, and they were asking, I didn't even hear the question. It was just the answer. I'm assuming, deducing the question was something like, how'd you get started doing screenplays? Like that kind of thing. And his answer, I was just very relatable to me. He was like, I made it my hobby. Like, rather than watch TV, I worked on the screenplay. And like, he was like, because you're not getting paid at first. Nobody cares at first. Like, you're not, like you can't. And I see this all the time, like especially in these comic groups on Facebook, where like if you want to just get inundated with bad ideas, join a Facebook comic group. Like it's just, it's just. But every once in a while you'll see someone say like, when they're trying to figure out how to price their comic, well, how many hours did you spend on it? And like basically they're taking down the path of like, you need to like figure out, this is your rate per hour. Therefore if you spent 2 years on your comic, you need 2 years salary to recoup those expenses. And it's like, that's not the math. That
No.
can't be the math. No, like no one's gonna do it if that's the math. The math should be: do you enjoy this more than watching Netflix? You know, or at the very least, when you're done with it, will you be more happy with yourself than if you had spent a year watching Netflix? You know, and I think like that needs to be the most basic metric.
Yeah.
Not like, should I be working at Target or should I do a comic? Like it's crazy. It's a crazy way to think about it, you know? And I don't know. Yeah, like, and sometimes when I think about it, even I think like, well, this is going to be a year of my free time working on this comic. Sometimes you feel a little bit of like the tingle of like, oh,
Yeah.
you know, like
Oh yeah, it's intimidating, right? It's
but as opposed to what? Like, what would I be doing instead?
Yep.
You know, and it's like I would be, you know, replaying Trojan on the NES, like the Nintendo. You know, like I would, I don't know. I'd probably watch like Marvelous Mrs. Maisel or whatever. Like, I don't know. I would just be like goofing off, and it's like, and I'm sure I'd have fun with that. But the math to me is after 12 or 13 months working on a comic, or after 12 and 13 months, what would I feel better about? Being caught up on Netflix or having a finished piece of work, you know, that is something I did. And for me, the math has always come up when I do that calculation. I would rather have a thing that I did.
Yeah, 100%. And another thing too is like, this is where I do think like you having other guests on is a good idea, because what I'm shocked by is when I talk to friends of mine who are novelists or write books, they have so much better of an understanding of like the game, the way it works, the promotion angle, like the submission and rejection process, like the idea of distribution and bookstores and like how important those things are. And like there's this weird thing that happens in comics where people get so myopic they forget they're making books. And it's like I feel like people who make books and are constantly like pitching and submitting, and they're submitting to like the biggest publishers in the world, or even small publishers, you know, who are like sub-owned by like the biggest distributors in the world. Like it's there's a game to it, and also like novelists totally get the fact that like most of your advances aren't going to be great.
Right.
And if you're writing for somebody else, that's where you start like if you're ghost writing, that's where you charge the salary, right? Like if some politicians like hiring you to write their book, that's where you charge like premium rates, because you know it's not worth getting paid McDonald's wages to write for somebody else. It's just not.
Right.
Like
But if you're going to write the great American novel, that's
yeah,
a thing where you know, and the society knows,
yeah,
that's probably going to be unpaid labor for a couple years.
yeah. And is that right?
And we're all
No,
fine
but
with it. But
yeah,
somehow with comics, it's like, oh.
yeah. And
You
I
know,
mean, you know, there's a good argument to be had that maybe that's not how society should be when it comes to art. Like maybe there need to be more grants or funding or ways to like kind of make that different. But it's like that's again that skepticism versus like cynicism, where it's like, hey, you can be optimistic about like maybe the prospects of raising the bar for like how cartoonists are viewed or how writers are viewed or like how that works, but also be aware where the industry is. Like it's not like you're going to blink tomorrow and it's going to shift. um and it's like that's the part that like is annoying about some of those groups, because like again, like a lot of people are like vying to get paid less than minimum wage to draw somebody's stupid superhero comic. And it's
right.
like, again, like if that's what you want to do and that's what you dream about, then cool. But if not, like why wouldn't you be working on your own thing? Like,
Right.
and then like, you know, in a scenario where it's like, you know, like right now, anytime I feel intimidated about the work I do, it's like I'm daydreaming about the Brownings and like the research I'm doing. It's fun. I'm really sold on the historical fiction thing, Gary. Yeah, just from I don't know. Anyhow, you've
I
been
told you
at
to the
that
dark
game for a
side.
while. Yeah, yeah. You convinced me.
Um, yeah, it's funny. I just had a similar, again, and this is they're getting way too much airtime, but there's another Facebook comic group where some guy went on there and was ranting about, so basically, and this is another thing, I'm trying to be careful because I don't want to, but I'm just going to speak freely, I guess, live stream. Like, I feel like writers are more common than artists. And I feel like it's easier to brand yourself as a writer than as an artist. I think that, and that's the distinction. I think there are definitely writers out there, great writers, and maybe more of them than there are people who can draw a comic page. But I think it's also real easy. Like, I think there's a lot of people with an idea for a comic who have called themselves a writer, an idea for a children's book. And it's like, I'm going to be the writer, and maybe they're kind of inflating their credentials a little bit. But anyway, there was a guy in one of these groups who was ranting about, like, I have this comic idea and I've been trying to find artists to draw it. And like, they all are charging like crazy amounts. I don't know what they're thinking with these page rates. Like they're madness. Like, like they're just like really, and you got the impression like, wow, he's like running all these people who are asking for like $800 a page. And now they're asking for like 50 or $100. But it's like, and I tried to put very gently in the comments, like I observed that if you're asking like, this is your baby. This is your thing.
Yeah.
You can't expect someone you're hiring to be as passionate and as willing to work for free.
I don't know, Gary.
Your baby. Like,
I don't know, because I feel like my house really needs plumbing, and I'm very passionate about like having solid, wonderful plumbing in my house. And I'm so mad at all these plumbers who want to charge.
Yeah.
Like, they aren't even passionate about the plumbing in my house.
Don't they understand that? Like, see, well, that, I think that's the the shadow side of it is like just basically the lack of valuing art. You know, like that art somehow should be, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't go to like a mechanic and say like, you don't understand, I need this car.
This is a really cool car. Don't you understand?
But like, that's what this is what it costs to fix it. But I mean, I think if you're like, I know for myself, obviously I'm not doing any like, I'm not work for art for hire right now. Like, the only drawing I'm doing is either for a day job or comic. Like, I just don't have bandwidth for anything else. But even if I wasn't, if I'm in like, let's say I'm partnering with someone, we both had an idea and I'm going to draw it.
Yeah.
I would expect less money than if some rando comes up to me and says, hey, I got this comic idea and I want to hire you to draw it. That's like instantly in my head, it's like, well, that's twice as expensive because I don't care about it. Like, you need to make me care with the money, like I don't. And I think this guy was not getting that. He has a story that he wrote. He's excited about it. He's convinced it's going to change the world. And all he needs is just some dipshit to draw it. And why aren't these guys cooperating? And he's not kidding. It's like, why would anyone want to do that unless you want to pay them?
Well, that's one way that like Los Angeles or like New York or like a major city where there's actual deals being negotiated is advantageous for people in that bubble of like, I have this dream. Why doesn't anyone care?
Yeah.
In LA, like, it's really obvious. Like, no one cares.
Everyone has a dream.
Yeah, just because you get an elevator pitch meeting with like Netflix doesn't mean they're picking it up tomorrow. Like, it's literally a joke and a meme that Hollywood is the city of broken dreams, right? It's like, you're not like, just because you're in an improv group doesn't mean everyone loves you. Like, and the weird thing is, LA is also full of people doing improv groups, doing elevator pitch meetings and stuff like that, because you do see it happen. It does happen. Like, people do break, but it's like the idea is it's your job as the writer to get people invested in it. Not you, Gary, but the guy in the Facebook group. It's his job to get people sold on it. It's his job to convince an artist to do it. It's his job to pay the artist if the artist wants to get paid. Or find somebody who's equally passionate about it. Like, for, my sister wrote a great script I believed in it, and we have a deal where we're both taking the same risk. Like we're getting the same cut of our advance. We're getting the same cut of creator ownership, and it's
Right.
like that to me is worth it because I believe in the story. And hey, if it's a failure on the market, I know it's going to be a good book, and I
Which,
want
by
to
the
see that
way,
book really happen.
I don't know, but just from the
Yeah,
tone and impression I got from this guy's rant, I
yeah.
guarantee you he's not giving them any percent of the ownership or anything like that. Like
Yeah, and
he's,
that's absurd. Like, why would anyone work for less than $50 a page?
of course.
I mean, like, and again, if somebody's doing that, I'd be like, dude, McDonald's, go flip burgers, then
Well,
make your own pages. Like,
and this
that's
is
way more
why,
fun, and at least it's clear cut and easy, and you can kind of do it. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's like it's rote learning. Like, you can go
right.
there, you can watch a tutorial, and then you can be doing that job in a week, and then keep that creative fluid free in your brain for like when you get home and you hate McDonald's, and use that as fuel to like make
Right.
your own thing, you know?
Well,
Yeah.
and I said normally I don't get drawn into this stuff, but there was something about this guy's like the edge in his post that kind of irritated me. Where I was
Yeah.
like, this guy's kind of a dick, like, and I just feel like, and I wasn't going to engage because I don't sit and argue on the internet, but I felt like someone needs to
Yep.
push back a little,
This is how
like
I
and
end
just
up.
kind of,
Yeah.
just for the record, he's not going to understand it. He's not going to hear it, but everyone else, I worry about these 16-year-olds who want to be in comics and they're reading this and taking that to heart,
Yeah.
and I feel like it's important for an old man like me to go on and say, like, don't listen to this guy. Like, he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. And like, don't let him get in your head. Don't, because
Yeah.
I've seen that happen too. He will sit down a comic, some young guy, people like him, and say, I'm willing to pay 25 bucks a page. And the kid will say, well, gosh, that's not, it's this many hours. That's a lot of time. And I was hoping for at least like 50 or, which still is like a crazy rate. But like, and he'll say, like, look, you're nobody. Like there's all sorts of, I could find some, Filipino,
Yeah.
like, to do this for $5 a page.
Yep.
This is a great deal. It's clout, it's exposure. Like, and
it's like,
fill their head with this idea of like, well, I mean, you make a lot of sense. And now
Yep.
they're working for less than they should get, and like, I'm not on my watch. Like,
yeah.
no.
No, I get it. I hate that so much. Like, I wish, again, like, I think this is like the, man, it's funny. I didn't expect us to head in this ranty. I'm sorry. Every time I end up on here, we're making angry rants.
Yeah, I know. We're gonna move off this. And also, I want to add a qualifier again.
Yeah.
Thinking about it, when I said I'll hire some Filipino, I don't mean I mean someone who's in the Philippines. That's the move. In case you're unaware,
Yeah.
like you see that a lot. Like there's a lot of talented artists there who will charge 20% of what like an artist in the Western world would charge.
Yep.
Because cost of living is different and it's still a lot of money for them. But that's what you see. That's why you see a lot of that. You see a lot of people who are trying to put together their indie comic and they can't draw and they're looking to hire. They'll go overseas to hire someone in a different country who will take 15 bucks a page, or something like that. So
yeah, and I think my last thought on it is just like, I wish more people in the comics bubble would get out of the comics bubble for things like business. Like, it's like understand what a confidence scam is. Like, look into, just take like 5 minutes to look up all the indicators of a confidence scam, right? There's the sense of urgency that's built into it. There's like 5 red flag things that happen in a confidence scam, and there are a bunch of people in some comics movements that are very popular online, that are playing people for mass amounts of money, and they're running confidence scams, and the people getting screwed over in it are often artists. So it's like, as an artist, if you like Gary was given that example of like the guy who's going to be like, well, kid, there's plenty of guys out there. So now you're creating, like, what they're doing there is a sense of manipulation. It's like they're creating a sense of rarity. Like, okay, it's a rare thing. And hey, you've got 15 minutes to make this decision or I'm going to the next guy. Okay, now it's a sense of urgency, right?
Yeah.
they're belittling the value that you offer. Like, well, you're not even that good or seasoned. So now they're belittling the value. So
I can tell you one of the worst freelance jobs I ever had. It was as a writer, but it's in a lot of ways, it's the same kind of,
yeah,
it works all the same way. One of the worst I ever had was, and this was a big established place. They came to me and they wanted to hire me for some coverage. They wanted me to go to San Diego Comic-Con and for the whole, and write up like different things there. It was good money. They would have more or less, like I would have had to pay for the whole trip out of pocket, but I would have made enough back to make that back and then some. It was like a pretty good deal. But there were a lot of concerns about the employer themselves. Like you don't know if you want to get in bed with them. And I was needing work at the time. So I was leaning toward like, I think I should just do it. But when they made the offer, I said, cool. Can I get back to you tomorrow with my answer? And this lady was like, no, if you don't tell me now whether you're doing this, we're moving on to the next person.
Oh, I hate that.
And I ended up doing it. And again, it was the worst, most nightmarish job I've ever done, actually in my life, but especially as a creative. Like it was, that should have been the key. Like if someone's going to sweat you like that, and be like, no. There are a million writing monkeys out there. There are a million artists out there. Like we'll just move to the next one in line. So if you don't want this opportunity, see you later, pal. Like if that's the vibe, walk. Well, take it from me.
Here's the other thing. Usually the type of people who could actually pull that in reality and not be lying don't have to even say it.
No.
It's like the guy who walks into the bar like full of bluster and he's like, it's visibly obvious that they're not like a threat. And then you got the giant guy who clearly does MMA just quiet in the corner. Which one do you not want to mess with? Right? I got dogs barking. You might want to mute me.
Yeah. They want to be involved. I'm going to mute you for a second. Yeah, and this is exactly it. Like if you're asking people to work for basically $4 or $5 an hour to draw your idea, like it just doesn't make sense. You're taking advantage of people. Yeah, it's flat out. You're just taking advantage of people. And I hope someone who's thinking about doing that or has done that is watching right now. I don't know why they would be, but I hope they are. Stop it. You're taking advantage of people. Like it's wrong what you're asking people to do. I don't know how else to say it. And like Josh was saying, like you need to work on your pitch. If they're not excited about your idea to the point it's like, you know what, I'll work for free just to get on the ground floor with your amazing idea, then like that's your problem. That's not theirs. Like I'm sorry, if you can't sex it up and get someone willing to work for cheap, it's just an idea. And there's so many of them out there. Settle down. Stop making people make these difficult decisions.
Yeah, and again, like read business outside of just comic books, right? Like in business, like one thing you always are seeking to get for a good situation with like a business partner is a win-win situation. Even with customers, right? Like anyone can, like bad sales is selling a product that no one will buy again. That's like the worst realm of sales and commerce. The kind of sales that builds businesses is like a sale where you're selling a product that somebody wants to buy again, like that they're happy with. That's a win-win for the customer, right? That's what you want to do with collaborators in comics. Like make it a win-win, make it, like even if they're equally into it, make it so that you guys have equal stakes in the game. So it also benefits you because they're going to have equal motivation to promote it, right? Like if somebody hires me and I'm work for hire, and I'm like on the hook for like, just whatever I'm going to charge hourly. I'm going to charge way more than $50 a page. But if I'm doing that, I'm done with the book. Maybe I'll mention it on Facebook once or twice. Like, unless it's something I'm really excited about. But if I'm equally staked in it, it's something I really believe in. and I'm getting the equal cut of like the royalties when it sells, then suddenly I have a lot of like motivation for it to succeed and to try to promote it and to try to do signings and all that stuff, you know?
Right.
I don't know.
No, that's another part of, yeah, for sure. Well, and that's where it's like, you know, do they get, let's see here.
But yeah, that's a tough thing in our, it's tough in our industry.
Squatch, and Squatch, I don't know if he's okay with me talking about this, but I do still think someday there will be some variant, very short run Squatchy painted D versus M covers. Like just for, I think that's something that he and I have talked about, and I do like the idea of it. But we got to figure out. It's got to be like something where we're both winning. And I worry that he is a little too quick to, and I'm actually looking out for him. I'm worried that it would like not be like, I want to make sure that we both, not just me, but we both do okay from that. So that's a part of what I'm trying to figure out. But
yeah, that's tough with collaborators. I mean, you want to set up fair situations, you know, but also just, you know, I think creatives out there take a little bit of, you know, of that into your own hands too. Don't just expect that the industry is gonna because if, you know, at the end of the day, like if you think about it from like the writer's perspective, if they can get away with getting an artist to do a comic book, which is a crazy amount of work for free, that's not even into their idea, like,
yeah,
why shouldn't they? Like, if you could get somebody to do your plumbing in your house for free, to be honest, are you really not going to take advantage of that? Right?
Of course. Yeah.
Just don't be that plumber. Don't be that person, you know?
Well, and then, yeah, and this is like, we'll steer it away from the rant, but
yes.
my last thought is like, you know, the irony here is like this guy and guys like him, there's a million like him. I've seen his type many, many times.
Yeah.
Are ranting that, you know, people aren't willing to be as excited about his project as he is.
Yes.
You know, basically, that's how I read it. And you even see that in businesses. I remember I've worked at companies where like the CEO is like, I'm here at 5 a.m. and I'm leaving every night at 10 p.m. And I'm coming in on weekends and using this as like, and you should, it's like, yeah. And what are you getting paid and what am I getting paid? And how many stock options do you have? And how many do I have? Like, shut up. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's different. And it's the same with this guy who's like, I don't understand why you're not excited about my comic idea. But, I lost my train of thought again. The whole thing upsets me so much. Like, it's a bad, I know what it was. It's like these people who they feel like that. And the whole pitch is basically like, I believe in my idea, but apparently not enough to invest. Like, and that's, I think, the counter. If you want to do like a rhetorical jujitsu move on these people, be like, if like you're telling me to believe in this thing, but you're unwilling to put your own money on the line, apparently, you know, so I'm supposed to be like an evangelist. I'm supposed to be passionate and like nuts about your project, but you're also being very careful about how far you're going in. I don't know. I'm doing penny antes. Like, stop it. One way to show me that you believe in this is like you're willing to pay me $1,500. Like that's. But.
Yeah, I think I think that makes perfect sense, because the other thing is, again, just like outside of comics, like in a comic bubble, it all kind of is pretty standard for like what is in the industry, what kind of like abuses of artists exist, all sorts of stuff. We could go on forever about that. But it's like, if you just look outside of comics, there's a lot of deals that no one on the planet would take except in comics.
Yeah.
And so it's like, just keep in mind, like, it's your time, and your time is worth enough to where, like, I know I brought up McDonald's. I don't want to belittle McDonald's either.
Yeah,
like as a job,
that's great. It's just a question of how hard are you working for how much pay.
But they think your time, like that's the thing. Like
Yeah.
even like Ronald McDonald, and like as evil as that company can be sometimes, they value your hours enough to pay you something per
Right.
hour. Maybe not. Maybe they don't value it enough. Maybe they need to unionize or whatever. But my point is, they still value a laborer's time. And it's like that's the thing. Like if somebody doesn't value your time and want to match it with money or with risk, like in the sense of like cut them in on the creation, because that's, to me, that's the two options. You either get paid really fairly and well for your time, or number two, you really believe in the project and you're equally vested in it. Like you get a cut, you get a big cut. Like you should, if you're an artist in comics, you should get half, because you are writing part of it, like as the artist.
Yeah. I mean, I could go with, I mean, the way I see it, I mean, it's tough. It goes both ways. It's like, you don't have a comic if I don't draw it. It's like, well, you have nothing to draw if I don't write it.
Exactly.
So, and ultimately, like, I would say, like, the idea pushes it over half and half to me. Like, you know, if I was approaching that, I would be like whether I was writing and I needed someone to draw, or someone was coming to me with something written and they wanted me to draw it.
It depends.
Like, I could go along with 60-40, like just picking numbers out where it's like, yeah, I mean, it is your idea, you know, and like that's ultimately what people are probably going to buy into, is the idea, not so much what it looks like.
It depends.
I could go along like, okay, maybe, but not like 90-10. No,
yeah.
Like, you know.
I think it depends. Like, so if you look at like something like the Sandman, right? The artists that are cut in on that comic, like Sam Keith gets a cut of Sandman sales. Why that is like the early characters, he was the first person to iterate those characters visually. So it's a little, it's different. Like, for instance, if Dinosaurs versus Mars Bots became like a franchise, right? And then you have to hire artists, they shouldn't be getting 50% of anything that's your creation, because you've created it, you've created the visual look, you've created new character. Now, if they're introducing new characters and new ideas to it, that's where it gets like to larger percentages. If it's an equal split where it's like a blank slate, a blank script, and there's just text and you're iterating that to like a graphic novel, you want to be in that I'm just saying, from the artist perspective, you want to be in that Dave Gibbons seat, where like, I don't think Dave Gibbons is like kicking himself for having half of Watchmen, nor do I think like that book would not be what it is if it were just Alan Moore. It just wouldn't. Alan Moore's brilliant, but Dave Gibbons made that book just as much as Alan Moore, you know, including writing. Because you think about like the costumes and just the look, like there's something very iconic about that. So I'm rambling, but that's
no, I think, I totally agree.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. We got to stop doing angry rants.
Yeah. It's funny. This morning when I was like, I have a little, I've set up a weekly alarm to say like, hey, 30 minutes till a live stream, so I can get my shit together and be on here. And while I was kind of scrambling, tying up my hair and all that stuff, I was like, I don't even know what I'm going to talk about today. And like, I would be talking the entire time, you know? So it's, I guess the lesson is I don't need to stress so much about like, do I have content?
Oh yeah. With streaming, you'll see this too, but it's like, I often, before going on stream, feel like I have nothing to say. This is not going to be interesting and no one's going to show up. Those are like the three thoughts. And as you do it, like you start realizing people do show up, and then just, like content happens. And when you're speaking stream of consciousness, it's like, eventually you'll touch on something interesting. You know?
Content happens. That's the bumper sticker. Just
I
like
love
shit
that.
happens. Shit content happens too. Maybe that's what this is today. I don't know. But it's, that I'm going to make, I'll put it on my Etsy shop. Content happens. And
I like it.
There we go. I'll hire, I'm busy right now, so I'll hire a graphic designer to make it for me, but they need to do it for the exposure. They need to.
I think you just need to find one that really understands the brilliance of your idea. I mean, unlike these entitled graphic designers and artists out there who just want pay for what they're
Yeah,
doing.
yeah, that's right. That's right.
Can you
This guy's
believe
smart.
it?
Hey, this guy, and he was the irony. This is also where I know, like, you're not really a writer.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm getting back to this guy. This is the last thing I'm going to say about him.
He is a mystical character.
He just, I don't know. He just rubbed me the wrong. I think because it's all triggering. It's all because you've met guys like him, and you just, you know, you read this. It's like, I know exactly what you're about. And
Yeah.
yeah. But like, he, you know, this is how I knew he wasn't a writer, like really a writer, someone who works on the craft of writing, where he was doing all the like greatest hits of like, I don't know how you can charge this when it's just a hobby, and like, you know, like all this kind of stuff. It's like, no one, clearly you've not been in a position where you're trying to make money off writing, you know, because you would have been so incensed to have someone say like, hey, can you write up some copy for me for my site? I need like some bloggers. And you're like, sure. What's the rate? And they're like, no rate. No.
Well,
like, I mean, I don't know. Like, we'll see what the clicks are.
I guarantee the post probably had a ton of spelling and grammatical errors.
Of course. Like, he doesn't, like, this is why I know, like, when he says he's a writer, I know this guy because I was that guy. And this is probably where the disdain comes from. You know, what you hate most, what triggers you the most, or when you see in people things that you don't like about yourself, or some version of yourself, or what you were, you are,
like the darkness you could be.
You could, yes, your shadow potential. Like, he's in a coffee shop writing in his journal, telling everybody he's a writer. That's the kind of writer he is. And I have no time or patience for that anymore. None at all, you know, because I did that. I went through that phase in high school where you're like the interesting artist who's not actually making anything. And it's sad. It's sad. Dude, if you're watching, you're sad. Okay, that's it. Done.
Perfect. Oh my gosh. Okay, one last thing on this guy. I think
you haven't even seen the post and you're mad. I know. It's just like, ugh.
You need to steal whatever picture he has on his Facebook and make him a background character that gets murdered in DVSM.
That's right.
And it'll only be known about for viewers of this stream.
This isn't too much of a spoiler. It's just more of a tease, maybe. There is much later. I'll be drawing this probably late in the year. But I am planning basically like a very elaborate 2-page Carnage spread. Like just a horrible like war zone kind of view of something. And I'm going to need bodies. And yeah, maybe I'll pull his profile picture now and just throw him in there. Maybe every person who's wronged me, or, you know, like I'll just make that'll be the field of bodies. It's all these just, you know, horrible bosses and like nasty ex-girlfriends, just all of them. Just it'll be just this pile of just you know, like all the people that no, I wouldn't do that. It's terrible.
I will tell you though, that's one of the reasons there's a joke among cartoonists that like you want to be careful if you're dating an autobiographical cartoonist.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
Yeah. We have strange weapons, us artists.
Yeah. I really would be, you know, you've asked a lot, like to lots of people. Have you ever considered autobio? I have, and I have to admit, like, when you think about, so what would it be? What would be the stories to tell? I like this for the people who's really going to, who should get nailed in a future D versus M? What terrible boss should get nailed in a future? I'm gonna have to write in. Actually, you know, now you got me thinking. In D versus M5, again, teases more than spoilers. That is the nickname for for D versus M5 in my files is D versus M Cosmic, because that's going to be the most far out, off-world, aliens, like kind of crazy things happening. That would be the one to work in the anal probe, but I don't know. Maybe I'll find a headshot of that Hollywood producer that Chris and I wasted our times with. But
this is the thing. I mean, we can't forget that like Citizen Kane was just like a very pent up piece making fun of William Randolph Hearst.
That's right. That's right. Did you watch Mank? That is basically the movie about the making of Citizen Kane.
You know what? I haven't actually. Is it good?
Really good. Yeah, really interesting. But,
nice.
Gary Oldman plays. I don't remember the guy's first name. It's Mankiewicz, I think, is the guy who wrote Citizen Kane.
Well, if
I don't know who they got to play Orson Welles, but he's phenomenal. He looks and acts just like him.
If Oldman's in it, it's got to be good.
Yeah, it was really good. It was. I think it's a Netflix only. Like it was a stream only. I don't think it came out in theaters. So.
All right, now I have another thing to add to my list of movies. That actually, I've seen the trailers for it and it looked really interesting. It was filmed in like black and white, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right there. That's my jam.
They kind of did it like it was made in that era. Like that was sort of the look of it, which would have been, I forgot, what is Citizen Kane? Is that like the 30s? I don't know. I feel like as a movie nerd, I should know when Citizen Kane came out. But.
Yeah, I think it was let's see, War of the Worlds. Was that? Oh my gosh. Yeah,
that was like radio only. So that would have been.
Yeah, that predates Citizen. So that's why I was like trying to. Was that like pre-World War II or was that around World War II?
So. No, for sure War of the Worlds was pre.
Okay.
I mean, I can't bet 100%, but I'm going to bet 99%. It was pre-World War II.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I would Google, but I'm working just for Squatch if he's watching. I'm working, so I can't really Google right now.
So I feel like Citizen Kane. So War of the Worlds is before World War II. I think you're definitely right about that. That's the 30s. I think Citizen Kane's got to be early 40s. That's what I would guess.
I would think at latest because
also because they're still wearing fedoras in it, so it's like it's not going to be. The fedora kind of went out of fashion like mid 40s.
Well, and I could be wrong, but at least from watching Mank, you get a strong Depression or just barely post-Depression era vibe from.
Got it. So maybe it's like.
So that makes me think like. Maybe 30s, maybe like I don't know if we're even in World War II yet. Like maybe
I think
just prior.
Is FDR president at this point?
I don't remember if the president's mentioned. I know they're talking a lot about Upton Sinclair.
Yeah.
And I think he was running for governor of California or something. So.
Okay. I'll have to Google that in a second.
Yeah. Upton Sinclair, for people who are unaware. Kind of an interesting character. When you read like what he was running on and the things he was talking about in his stump speeches, it's like Bernie Sanders 100 years ago, like, and I think I don't want to, boy, now we're going from angry rants to politics and I'm really not. But it just goes to show like anyone who would brand Sanders as kind of a radical, like these are old ideas. That just haven't gotten traction, and that's why we're still talking about them. But it's interesting to read, like I said, what he was campaigning on, what he was running on, because it's very familiar.
Oh yeah. Those ideas are not new. Yeah, it's
just because like the fight never ends, and now I'm caffeinated, I'm working, and I'm just hitting all the hot topics. Was something I liked about the latest Star Wars trilogy. I have complaints about the latest Star Wars trilogy, but something I liked that a lot of people didn't is that this idea that like, the rebels win, the Emperor is dead, Vader is dead, Like it should just be like this sunny utopia now. And then we pick up Force Awakens, and it's like you have basically Empire version 2.0 in control, and it's like, well, what was the point of all of it? And like Luke is disillusioned, you know, and like because which you would imagine, you know, like he fought the fight, he had his hero moments, and yet nothing changed. To me, and maybe this is like cynicism versus pessimism versus being clear-eyed or whatever. Like to me, that's exactly how the world works, and it was very like I totally accepted that. Like you can't just like, you know, blow up a Death Star and throw a evil Sith down a well and figure like we're done right now. Everything's going to be good forever. Like it's never done. It's like the fight is always going. Like, and that's why I totally thought that was fine. You know, like I thought, like, yeah, no, I can accept that. I can accept that you have, you know, the Empire was in charge forever. They're not just going to vanish overnight just because you decapitate it. Like, it's still going to be out there. But
yeah, there's going to be those weird people keeping their like Empire stuff like in their basement, you know.
Yeah, or like, oh, remember the glory days? It's like these Nazis in Brazil. You know,
the crazy Empire stuff that's like at the back of like the antique store in space.
That's right. That's right. And there's people who would collect all the Empire paraphernalia. They're not imperial. They're not imperial. Don't get me wrong. I just love that era. You know, and it's right.
I love it. I think
the Emperor had some good. Palpatine had some good ideas.
I also will say, like, just on the Sanders tip, and not to get political, but like, I was shocked to find out like a lot of that goes back to like Thomas Paine, which is like the founding of the stuff Sanders is talking about. If you read Paine, Sanders is tame, what he's talking about, you know. But anyhow, so I always think that's interesting to like look at the origins of like ideas, because you do find it does become very much there's nothing new under the sun for sure. Yeah.
Well, and it's I mean I think there are not a ton, but there are some just basic human dilemmas. Like if you're gonna get a bunch of people together to live in the same space, and you got to figure out how that's going to work. There's just a constant balance, you know, that you're trying to strike, and that stuff's never going to be resolved. It's always going to be a negotiation, a debate, and a conversation.
Totally agreed. Speaking of, I'm going to disappear for 2 seconds and refill my coffee.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Frank officially coming out in support of Palpatine. Yeah, he honestly, I'm one of those people that I feel like the prequels are basically bad. But an unsung hero, and even for someone who feels like that, who like doesn't love the prequels, Ian McDiarmid just smashed it out of the park. Like he did he was the highlight of basically those movies, as far as I'm concerned. More than Ewan McGregor, more than like any other part of it. Like he made that semi-watchable, where I feel like a lot of it is rough, really rough stuff.
So, Gary, how's your progress right now? Like, where are you at on your book?
So, this is something I think I talked about this once on the Making Comics podcast, which, as I mentioned before, I've already reached out to those guys and said, like, you gotta try, you know, I gotta have you on sometime, because they're good guys and they're good creators, and I think, you know, I want to try and share some different faces when I can. But we were talking about writing and editing, and I was talking on the podcast once about how in a way, not in a way, like it is, maybe like the last revision of the writing I do is when I'm placing dialogue on the page. Because that's sometimes where first you decide there's an aesthetic thing where it's like, if I can make this sentence or this blurb, this dialogue bubble, 3 words shorter, it'll fit more neatly in this box, you know, or like it's this, or the opposite direction. It's sizing weird, and I could add another few words here and it would make it look nicer, you know,
Yes.
like, so that is kind of the last pass on the writing for me, where like I'll write and write and write and get to a point where it's like, this is it, this is the script. But then this is the stage where I'm dropping in dialogue and I'm looking at how it looks and I'm looking at it in comparison to my reference images and what I think that composition is going to look like, and decide like, do I need to tweak this or do a line break differently? And right now, what I'm doing, just for the technical thing, there's a line from one character on the second to last panel on the page, where he starts to say something and trails off a little bit and then continues his thought. And I'm looking at it and I'm looking at it in the composition of the page. And I'm realizing that last word, that last part of his sentence, could roll over into the last panel of the page. And I think that would look better and it would work better with the art. This is something that's very hard to visualize when you're just thumbnailing and writing a script. Like, it's when you're actually doing the page, you realize like, you know what, this would look cooler if I broke it up like this.
That is one of the reasons I think like creator-owned stuff, even for publishers, is so much more fun. When you're working, like I've done illustrated books for like you know, publishers and stuff like that, and like often the process is like, you'll have a visual idea you like more, you pitch it, but they're like, yeah, now we have to go through like 10 corporate boards to kind of make this happen. Let's just stick to the script, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like creator-owned stuff right now, like I had an idea for based on the script where we're introducing Robert Browning for the first time, and the way the scene is written, it's like it's this misty scene in England, and it's like rain-covered street, and then we see the Barrett's residence, and then we see in the foreground we see like Robert holding a note and kind of looking at the Barrett's residence. And I think the intention originally was like, well, I mean, Robert is courting Elizabeth Browning at this, or Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Robert Browning is courting her at this time. And so like the idea I think originally was like, he's going to be like swooning and romantic. It's like a say anything moment. I was like, we don't know who this character is yet. We're introduced to them, and I want to give a reason for the page turn. So as I was thumbnailing it out, and like you were saying, it's like when it came to actually iterating the page, I was like, it'd be much better if he seems ominous, because then like toward the end of the page, you have like this tension built that like is like, what is this person doing? Like standing in the rain in front, like looking at a house, like that's a little creepy. Like that could be creepy. It could not be. Who knows? I want that question going through people's mind. So I went kind of ominous, and the editor gets back to me and goes, that's a little ominous. And I explained my reasoning, and they're like, that's perfect. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's keep it. Yeah. That's the best part about creator owned, is like you have like way more say in like the direction. And as long as you have a story reason for it, pretty much anything goes. And that makes for a way more fun process, like the DVSM thing, where it's like you're able to on the fly be like, this would be better. I also think that's another reason, like it's good to have an artist who's vested in the like if you're not writing it, have an artist that's vested in the creation of it, because of that, because then they can make those artist choices, like well, this type's going to flow better in a different thing.
I was thinking that, you know, like just to stand on the shoulders of what you just said, like it's also what the nice thing about basically being like a one-man shop.
Yes.
It's like I can make these command decisions throughout.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I don't have to worry about getting a buy-in or running it past anybody or going back to the writer, you know, like it's just like, and it means that, and this keeps it actually better. I like those opportunities, because while I liked when in the drawing phase of this process, I liked it to be somewhat autopilot, where I know my thumbs, I know my script, I know my
Yeah.
plan, I know my panels, and then now I'm just executing. And that's, I do want it to mostly be that. But I do leave myself opportunities to, like, I'll figure it out when I get to that page. Like, I don't know exactly what I want this panel to look like, but I'll play and figure it out. Or things like this, where it's like, you know, this dialogue's fine, but if I do this, like, that just works a little bit better.
Yep.
That it keeps it, so you're mostly just executing, but there is a little bit of creation still happening that's fun. It's a different kind of fun. But Chase, on Instagram, message me your Gmail, and I'll add it. So then next week or whatever, I'll know where to send you a link. So I look forward to that. And as for Squatchies, Gary loves porgs. The porgs were fine. I had no problem with the porgs. Like, believe me, I have complaints about the most recent Star Wars trilogy, but they're not porg related. The porgs were fine. They're mostly focused on the last movie, like Rise of Skywalker. Like, I really, it's the one Star Wars movie I don't own, where it really bothered me.
That's interesting.
But porgs are fine.
I think
I
weird.
kind of loved Force Awakens. Like,
Yeah.
I still, like, even though I feel like that whole last trilogy was just kind of a missed opportunity and they kind of fumbled the landing. Force Awakens was great. It had all the old feels. It was fun. And I know this is, but people who know me on Facebook, they know I feel this way. I loved The Last Jedi. Last Jedi is my second favorite Star Wars movie of all time. Like, I thought The Last Jedi was incredible. Now, was it perfect? No. And there are parts like the whole casino thing, I felt something about that didn't work. And there are a few beats here and there that I was like, I don't love that. But overall, I loved it. And that's part of why I hated Rise of Skywalker. I feel like some of it was like weird damage control. I think the outcry of Last Jedi cowed Disney, where they were like, oh, and like, I don't think they'd ever seen a fire spread online like that before. Now, I think especially Marvel, like, they're very hip to it and they know not to care. But like, I think that was the first time they saw like a weird fan reaction, like a part of the community that was like, this is garbage and this is not my Star Wars, rah, rah, rah. And like, they freaked, and they had just put a bunch of like billions of dollars into buying this property, and they're worried, like, did we just torpedo our own shit? And it was this weird, desperate fan servicey, like, scrambling out of this perceived hole they were in with Last Jedi, where I think they way overreacted. In my opinion, I think they should have just wrote it out, and you do an uplifting, cool ending that does not dismiss anything that happened in Last Jedi, but just, you know, builds from there. It would have been fine, and I'm confident history will be on my side, that The Last Jedi is one of the best Star Wars movies, and that the fan reaction effed that trilogy.
I like the whole thing.
Cool.
I'm one of those weird people who, like, I had no problem with any of them. Well, no, I had major problems with like all of them, but I didn't have enough problems.
You can't be a Star Wars fan if you don't have problems with Star Wars.
Exactly. But overall, I kind of enjoyed all three. I'd say the third is probably the weakest of them, although I'd say visually, there are some shots in that use themes, especially with the Kylo Ren kind of showdown at the end. Some of the set plays and just the art direction in that sequence were pretty incredible.
Hold on, just like, am I breaking up for you? Or are you, like, you're breaking up for me, and I can't tell.
I might be breaking up. I guess you have to ask Kat.
I'm getting a little bit of the Stephen Hawking voice from you, but
let's talk about quantum physics.
Let's talk about black holes.
Like a robot?
Still, you sound a little bit like a robot. Is everyone else? Is anyone in the chat? Is that? Is it just me experiencing that, or is that everybody? we'll see.
In case it's still going, I'm just going to talk about red light shifts and like, when you're basically at the event horizon of a black hole, and you're which one's a robot at GMD? That's what we're trying to figure out. I think it's me. I might have to
Let me see.
bail.
I'm gonna look again to see what. Yeah, robot. Yeah, okay. I'm sorry, it's you.
Okay.
It's you, not me. Just for a change, but it's fine. I don't think it's a deal breaker, but just so you know.
Okay. Yeah. If
there it goes. Yeah. Now you sound okay.
Okay. If it becomes problematic, I can head out too. So it's
no, you're fine.
Okay. Cool. All right. Squatch said, "Tell him to say beep, bop, boop, beep." Done. And then AGMD, don't tell people that. He said Josh isn't real.
Yeah, Josh isn't real.
The last person to say that in a chat just disappeared for a long time.
That's right. That's right. So we hit all the hot topics today. We brought up Bernie Sanders. We brought up Star Wars. We brought up fake con writers trying to basically acting like pimps, roping in poor young artists into their weird schemes that are never going to go anywhere. And so it's good. I don't know what's left.
Well, there's the used car sales element of it. And like, I would say just be leery of anyone who seems like a used car salesman, unless they're selling used cars. And even then, check the car,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm curious. So you're having the process of like sort of revising a bit of the script as you're starting to lay it out and iterate.
Yeah, I do. It's mostly I would say it's 75% an aesthetic thing. Like, how does this break into an attractive dialogue bubble? That's sort of, I can make kind of symmetrical. Like the basic things. I don't want like 3 lines that are this long and then like 2 words on the last line. Just basic things like that. Like, make it look. It's just basic layout stuff. And then but then that's while you're doing that, sometimes to get that attractive shape, that's where you realize, like, if I can trim a word out of this sentence, I can hit it. Or if I add 2 words to the sentence, I can do it.
Yep.
But then that's also where you're reading it again for maybe, in my case, the first time in months. And you're like, I would phrase that differently. Or sometimes, and again, no matter how many, and I go through a lot of drafts and a lot of prep. Sometimes when you put it on the page, you realize, like, that's not clear, or that doesn't, I think they're going to misunderstand that. Or I had one on, it wasn't the last page, it was the page before. I read it and I was like, oh, that's very exposition-y. Like, and I hate that stuff. I don't like characters saying anything that they should just know, and therefore they wouldn't say. Like, I really, like, that stuff drives me crazy. If you need to know things as a reader, I'm just going to have to trust, like, it'll become apparent, like, and I think an analogy I've used before, it's like sitting down at a table, but like, let's say you sit down at a table with a bunch of people who work someplace and they're in mid-conversation. The first couple lines, you might not totally get what they're going on about, but like, we've all had this experience. 45 seconds in, you're sort of following, and like, that's how I kind of approach. The closest I'll get to exposition is like, let's just throw you in the conversation and I'll try and write it in a way where you'll get it. But I don't want at any point the characters to stop when they're talking to each other and say, it's just like that time 8 years ago, like why would you not, like, do you remember that time 8 years ago when the aliens, like I'm making up stuff here, but like that, I hate that stuff. It pulls me out of it.
Or where they just suddenly start talking about their job description and they go, you remember what I'm doing here is, and it's like, wait, what? No one talks about their job. Like, I wouldn't like visit Gary at his work and see him talking to a coworker and be like, you remember how we do this forensic science? This is how it's like, no, I think you just kind of would talk shop and then let the audience figure it out.
I think like comic way, rather than say like, do you remember that time in that one case when we you know, like that's not how you would say it. What you'd say is like, I think it would be like, you know, Defendant Alvarez.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the comic story, they start doing what that means.
Yes.
And you'll see what that means. You know, like
Yes.
there's no, that's because that's not how people don't talk any other way. You
That's
know?
so
And
true.
D versus M is, if nothing else, like I'm try to keep it very naturalistic. And again, the only parts I want you suspending disbelief is when an alien or a dinosaur walks into frame.
There's also that part in the first DVSM where they say, "Are you talking about dinosaurs fighting Mars bots?" And it's like, "Yes, I'm talking about dinosaurs versus Mars bots." And then they look at the panel.
The famous first panel, D versus 1970 M, D versus M 1975, is when the two men in black are driving. They say like, "Well, we're men in black." You know, that's driving to another scene with some alien activity. Like, I mean, that's, you know, that's how it all sounds to me when I see exposition. Like, it's just like, oi, like this is hard. So I was laying out the dialogue a couple pages ago. And it wasn't as bad as like, well, here we are, scientists in the secret facility. You know, like that's
still like, working on the same old project.
Working on the secret project that the public can't know about. You know, like, I mean, it was nothing like that, but it was just enough where I was like, how can I maybe soften this a little bit more, you know? So
and that's the thing. It's exposition isn't bad. Like that, there's rules in writing that can always be broken or done well, but it's like, just be aware when you're using exposition and don't be using it as a crutch. And preferably, avoid it like the plague.
It's just to me, it's just like writing dialogue 101. You know, like, I mean, you know, and people say all the time, like, if you want to know if your dialogue's working, say it out loud.
Yep. That's actually a really good practice.
Which is really good. But the other thing is like, is this something you would say? You know, and this gets, you know, it's a level more complicated, but it's like, is this something if you're really understanding these characters as individuals, like real individuals with internal lives, would they say this to this? Like, would character A say this to character B? And would they say it like this? Like that? Is that how that conversation would go down? And if you're like, well, no, but I need the reader to, it's like, then I think that's a rewrite.
Yep.
Like you know, in my opinion, at least when you're doing what I'm trying to do here and things like it. Like, if there's some things where it works fine, you know, but
I will say, now I'm going to blank out on his name. The guy who does Night Business, and he quite often is doing the now I'm blanking out on the show about comics that are terrible, and I love it. Power Comics. Yeah, he's one of the co-hosts, and I'm blanking out on his name, but he writes comics that are intentionally exposition. So like, that is kind of amazing, because he'll have a scene where he's fighting someone, and he's like, I am going to put my fist against your cheek, and then he hits him, and he's like that, and it's. But everyone talks like that, where it's like the guy who got hit is like, oh no, you have hit me in the cheek, as he's
not only that, that was actually like you would see in mainstream, like Marvel and DC comics, especially in like the 70s and 80s, that seemed to be like the norm.
Yeah.
Like, or in the top, like there's probably a name for it. I don't use it in D versus M, so I never bother to say the name. But whenever you have like an explanatory caption up top, like usually in a box, will it be like Spider-Man leaps from the building, and the picture is Spider-Man leaping from a building? Like, why? I got it. Like, no shit. Like, I just saw that, you know. Spider-Man hits Dr. Octopus as hard as he can, and it's very obvious. Like, there's pictures here. I got it. I don't need closed captions, you know. So that was kind of the norm. Seems like they've gotten away from that, but there's an era where it's like everything that's happening is being described, written, you know.
Yeah, I think it's great though if used right. like in comics like Night Business, it makes perfect. Oh, Ben Mora, that's the writer, um, I believe. Yeah.
It could be. I have to admit, I've only watched like 1 or 2 Power comics.
So his stuff is worth. Fantagraphics has put out a couple of his things, and it's worth it just for the exploration of like intentionally. I don't know. They're kind of genius comics on like on a like I don't know, on a level where when Night Business first came out, they were these floppy comics that were being sold at cons by the creator, and there were all these cartoonists I knew who were passing around these copies and having this serious debate of, is this guy authentically making these comics that feel like a 7th grader with like a lot more talent than a 7th grader, but like they're all the content that like a 7th grade mind would envision in a comic, like an action comic, like a 7th grader who read a bunch of Frank Miller comics.
Yeah.
And went like just full bore, and no one could figure out whether it was like serious or not, like whether it was somebody riffing, or it was so effectively done that like I only found out like 2 years ago that it was like very intentional, and like the guy is aware of, like, he's self-aware, but it's like they're that well done. It's like a B movie that was so, like, you know how it's almost impossible to make a B movie?
Yes.
Like intentionally. It's like the one that pulled it off intentionally. Anyhow, his stuff's worth checking out. I think you'd like it.
Cool.
Sorry.
No, it's good. And I'm going to get the 5-minute warning. I'm going to try and get a habit of doing this too. I am nearing being done having my page all set up and ready to work with all my resources and all my dialogue laid out and a sense of like where things are going to be, which means I'm going to save this and reload page 9 and finish page 9. So and that's when I start drawing, as people will learn as they watch these. That's when I gotta focus to.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So
page 9 is going to be exciting though. So
I think I can rock it through. Like, there's not a lot to finish. It's a lot of just little. I'm looking at the test print right now. I think in an hour, 2 hours tops, I can get page 9 done, which means I'll be working on page 10. The drawing page 10 today, which again I said on the outside, the onset feels good. 10 is a nice milestone. So that's
great. I'm hoping to get to 10 on this thing. Maybe this weekend.
Yeah. Where are you at now?
I'm on page 6, but it's only the 4th page that I've made, because you have like title and all. So it's page 6 of the book, but it's the 4th page of illustrated.
Cool.
I should be able to knock it out today, but it'll be interesting to see. Yeah. So anyhow, if you guys are around, I'll probably be live streaming a little later in the day after lunch.
Yeah, and I probably will at least be like listening in while I work.
Cool. I'll make sure
I usually bounce back and forth between podcasts and music, and if you're streaming or someone else is streaming, like listening to that, you know.
Nice. I'll make sure to talk a lot of crap just to bait you into coming on. I'm kidding.
Talk about how Rise of Skywalker is the best Star Wars movie of them all, and how Rian Johnson ruined Star Wars. Then you'll bait me out.
I'm with you on that. I don't understand why people don't like that movie. I think either. Just visually that
I do know why. I do know, actually, no, to be fair to that side, I do understand why. And I think it boils down to that's not the Luke they wanted to see.
Oh, but I thought it was so brilliant.
I loved it.
Yeah.
Like, and I thought I loved it so much more than and I don't want to be dismissive of that side, but I loved it so much more than what I think they wanted to see, which is what we saw in The Mandalorian.
Yeah, which
They
I
wanted
liked.
to see like some crazy kung fu master Luke blazing through armies with his lightsaber. And I I I don't find that interesting.
I agree.
I don't find it consistent with what we know about Luke Skywalker. And I also don't make it doesn't make sense given what was established in Force Awakens where Luke took off.
Yeah.
Like you have to explain just in terms of storytelling. How if Luke is this total monster badass, like a Paime of the Jedi Order just sitting out there, why is he not like why is he leading the First Order, right? Why is he in hiding? What, like, I mean, you got to explain that somehow,
Yes.
and if he's like this monster badass who could totally take them all, like, and I think they did a better job of explaining that than they ever did explaining Obi-Wan and Yoda laying low for like 20 years while the Empire was running wild.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like Yoda goes toe to toe with the Emperor once and calls it a day. Nope, I'm going to go hide in the swamp for the rest of my life. Like that somehow you can accept, but Luke being disillusioned, like that being his excuse is like, doesn't make sense to you. It's the other way around. Luke totally makes sense. Yoda doesn't make sense. Kenobi doesn't make sense.
Well, and actually Yoda makes more sense of their choice with Luke, because the whole point is if Yoda's like in his older age, like kind of retreated to solitude in a swamp and is kind of refusing to train people and stuff like that, like what do you think is going to happen to Luke? Like,
right.
It's kind of a path of like a sensei type character,
Yes.
So I didn't find that bad at all. I thought that was a great move. I also think Mandalorian, it makes sense to have a younger Luke because it is a younger Luke.
Yeah, and it was cool. I teared up like every Star Wars geek when I realized like they're actually doing it. Oh my god, that's an X-wing. Oh my god, that's a green lightsaber. Like it was amazing fan service. I loved it. But I can also say that's the only level it works on. It's just like fun to see Luke, who you love, tear through bad guys, but like it's not interesting, and it doesn't tell you anything about Luke,
Yeah, we aren't learning anything new. Yeah.
It doesn't move the ball at all. It just is like, let's see Luke be a badass, which has some value. It's all storytelling and people want to see that. I get it. But if like for this story, for the latest sequel series, that to me that wouldn't have made any sense at all. Like it would be very contrived to figure out a way where he's not only super badass and also sitting this one out. Like that doesn't, I don't know how, that's a heavy lift writing wise to make that make sense. I think Johnson did like the very logical next step. He's probably given the Force Awakens script and it's like, all right, buddy, you're up. And he looked at it and it's like, well, how do I make any of this make sense? And some of this is probably, in a it's vaguely narcissistic, but if I was presented with the challenge of Force Awakens and told, how are you going to follow this? I think I'd make a lot of the same choices. And that's probably why, like, I thought, like, no, I think he did a great, like, makes perfect sense what he did, where, first of all, a lot of feedback was, oh, Force Awakens is just like a remix of like earlier Star Wars movies. And I allowed it. I love Force Awakens, but I allowed it. And even at the time, I looked back at an old Facebook post. I'd seen Force Awakens. I was gushing. I was like, I loved it. I was crying at the opening crawl. Like, it was amazing. But I'm reserving final judgment until I see the next one. Because if they're all just going to be soft reboots, if the next one is basically Empire, and the third one is basically Return of the Jedi, I'm less impressed by this. The only reason to ape the earlier movies in Force Awakens is if you're going to now misdirect. Like now it's going to go a different way. Like that, I think if you're going to tee up like, oh, okay, I get it. And then it's like, nope, we're going in a different direction now because it's a different generation. Then Force Awakens is awesome. If you're just going to remake Empire Strikes Back for The Last Jedi, Force Awakens is not awesome. And that's again, I was happy when like you saw Last Jedi and you're like, this is crazy the decisions they're making. Like they're going in totally different uncharted territory for Star Wars and I'm here for it. I get some people weren't, that's not what they wanted. They want the comfort food Star Wars, the very familiar Star Wars, the thing that makes them, you know, they want to see. It's just like, you know,
They want to see the same story told.
they
over
want to
and
see
over
Boba
again.
Fett crawl out of the Sarlacc. Like they want to see. It's like these are the characters I loved when I was 7.
I
And
will
wanna
say
see them.
I'm that weird fan that's like a mix of both, where I want to see new stories told, and I there's a part of me that kind of hates properties in general because of that. Like eventually properties get stale and sort of end up repeating the same story and almost end up bound to that, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but I also like I love Mandalorian. It's very fan servicey, and I
Yeah.
absolutely love what they're doing with it, and I think it works. Boba Fett, I was mixed. I liked the parts that felt like El Mariachi and less the parts that felt
Yeah.
like Spy Kids.
I've liked Mandalorian more than Boba Fett. If for no other reason than
I'm with you on that. Yeah.
I never bought into the whole Boba Fett fandom thing. Like going all the way back, even as a kid, like loving Star Wars, I never understood why people were. You know, he's cool armor, and that's why people care about him. And
he's got a cool costume.
Like you don't know anything about him, and I think unfortunately, you start explaining the magic, and the magic is less interesting. Like I think Boba Fett's a nice character to leave as a cipher, in my opinion. Like that's why, and this is again, like no one's gonna ever ask me to do it. But if I was like, we got to bring Boba Fett back. Fans want Boba Fett. How do you want to do it? I'd say you make him another weird side character in Mandalorian that we never know a lot about. Like that's the most I would want to do with him, because that's part of the mystique is what makes Boba Fett interesting. You start having his helmet off all the time and having him worried about like the politics of being a gang lord. Like this is not, you know, like that's not what I want from Boba Fett. You know, like so it's fine. It was okay, but I didn't love it. Mandalorian I liked until they start getting into a lot of the weird like Clone Wars material, like introducing Ahsoka and like the other men.
Oh, see, I'm all about that. I'm like,
I know, and I know a lot of people are. We'll save this for a future episode.
Yes, we should have a conversation.
I have strong feelings about Clone Wars. Like I've never bought into like any of that supplemental stuff. And I especially, this is the tease I'll give for some future rant about.
You know what? I will say also, Corey Kerr, if you're watching, you need to be on that episode.
Yeah, Corey, he should, because I know it seems like he enjoys it a lot more than I do.
Corey's a Clone Wars encyclopedia, yeah.
We can do like the 50s era news where it's like equal time. Like, you know, I think there should be a counterbalance to my position. I think as a Star Wars fan who did not love the prequels, like elements of the prequels, but not, overall felt like they were a huge missed opportunity and kind of like could be like way more bad than good. There's this weird revisionist history now. I'll encounter it with people I really respect, like, you know, like people who, like, I'm not saying they're wrong, but it's just astonishing to me where they'll be like, well, I'll say something about the prequels and they'll be like, you know, they're made a lot better if you watch these 76 episodes of Clone Wars. Like that drives me bananas, where it's like, okay, so if we spend 15 years explaining this horseshit that you made, like it's okay? Like, no, like that, I'm absolutely drawing the line. Like you can't revisionist history, you can't like release supplemental garbage just to sort of band-aid, you know, like this open wound in the Star Wars history. So that's number one. And second, like,
I agree with you, by the way, 100% on that. But
you know, and
I also will say they did, and it is an effective band-aid.
Well, okay, so it's maybe it's both. But second, and this is my biggest complaint, and this has always been my complaint about back when it was like expanded universe, like even back then, like the comics and the novels and stuff, I hated it. For this, if there's one reason I had to pick why I don't care about it and I prefer the movies above all else, and this is a subjective thing, this is a taste thing. To me, the events of the movies should represent the most significant, most consequential events going on in the galaxy in Star Wars. Okay. now you got to make a series, and you got to make this series interesting, like Clone Wars. And so to make it interesting, you got to have like stuff that matters, stuff that's impactful. And you basically, in my opinion, you start eating away on the edges of the movies being the most important events taking place in the galaxy in Star Wars. You're basically undermining the relevance of the movies. If, for example, and here's an easy example. Yoda dies in Return of the Jedi. When I'm gone, last of the Jedi you'll be, he tells Luke. Something like that, okay? Oh, now, except for Ahsoka, she's out there somewhere. Oh, well, she's not really a Jedi. She's only sort of Jedi. Oh, and except for like the kid from Rebels. Oh, and now that we think about it, like this is the kind of stuff that drives me crazy. And this is what I mean about like you're undermining the heart of Star Wars, which is the movies, and more than anything, the original trilogy, where you start adding all this supplemental material that's basically eating away at the edges of the heart. Like, and I don't like, but I understand the dilemma. You got to crank out content, and you can't make it sort of interesting because you got to keep the movies the most interesting. Like, I know you can't do that, but to me, that's why it's like you should be doing series about something way clear of the movies. Like, it should be 500 years after the fall of the Empire, or 1,000 years before Phantom Menace. Like, let's just do Star Wars other places, because as you're adding stuff to the mix of basically the original Skywalker 9 movies, you're just watering it down. No matter how well you're doing it, you're diluting it, in my opinion. That's my big complaint. Okay, anyway, I'm sure we'll talk about
I love it. I love it. That's
Squatch,
exciting.
Clone Wars was amazing. I know I have some of my best friends love Clone Wars. They've tried to steer me to it for a while. I have given Clone Wars a chance. I can tell you my most superficial like disinterest in it is like I hate the look of it. I hate that kind of like I'm not a big fan of like CG animation.
Yeah.
I think maybe I'd be more willing to give it a chance if it all looked like the original Clone Wars, like the Tartakovsky. If it all looked like that, maybe I would, just because I like that look, maybe I would have given it more of a chance. I hate that like CG cartoon look. Like it looks, I don't know. It doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, I'll tell you, like the first season, and I'm probably telling you something everybody who like got into the Clone Wars cartoons has told you. The first season, my first impression was like I hated the animation.
Yeah.
I kind of thought the stories were pretty boring. I thought maybe the war intro thing was kind of funny, where it's like, in the galaxy, and it's
yeah.
I was like, that's the only thing I like. That was my initial take. And then I think it was with my kid or something where I watched like a little further in, and you start like the style and all of it kind of grows on you, where it's like it's actually pretty effective, even the style they executed it in.
Yeah.
So it does grow on you like a fungus.
I have heard that a lot, and I've heard, and that's another thing where I see like on Q.
Yep,
I've heard this about so many shows, and my visceral reaction is like,
why not have it be good in the first?
Yeah, I can't. I'm not going to wait. There's so much content out there. I'm not going to wait for something to get good. Like, I'm sorry. Like, unless there's a really, like, it needs to be the best thing you've ever seen in your life in the 4th season. You know what I mean? Like, it really, because if you're going to burn my time, again, like, I'm a busy guy. I got things to do. Like, I can't, like, oh, you got to get through the first 2 seasons. You go after yourself. I'm not, this is an assignment now. Like, no. And why? Ultimately, like, so Anakin makes a little more sense in the prequels? No. So Grievous is not as much of a goofy character? No. Like, it's not, this is just, it's all bad, and it's all Band-Aids to make something less bad. And
yeah.
I can't be bothered.
Agreed, but I will say it's more like a tourniquet, and they did a good job.
I'm sure. And
fixing the bleeding.
Like, I've had enough people tell me like, no, it's good. It's good. And I think, and this is, again, like I don't expect anyone to co-sign with this. Even if it is great, I think I'm kind of opposed to it in principle. Like it's like, this is not.
Well, because it's canonizing a mistake.
It's canonizing. Yeah. And I think, and that's the other thing, like people, if you're older like me, you remember the hellscape of the expanded universe and what trash was out there. Like, people talk about that Zahn trilogy like it was good. That it was not. It was terrible. But like, and that was the best of it. Like, there was so much garbage in the expanded universe. And one of my favorite things I saw Disney do when they like picked up the property was like, we're wiping this all away. And there were a lot of diehards, people who were fans of those books and those comics who were like, oh, these are the best stories, Mara Jade, you know, like they were so upset. And I was like, thank God, because this was like an unwieldy mess. It didn't even make sense anymore. And it was all garbage and you made it all like canon. So now we're starting over. Clean slate, great, fully behind this. And as far as I'm concerned, they're like refilling it with a lot of garbage that like is creating questions and creating conflicts, contradictions. And like, you know, it's like, I thought the whole idea was let's erase expanded universe. Let's going forward, we're going to be very mindful about what we're adding to the superstructure of the movies, which is what we're going to like, that is where our loyalty has to lie. We need to not contradict or undermine or lessen the impact of the movies, you know, and that's not what they're doing. I don't know what they're doing. Like, I can't even really tell what they're doing. I think they started strong. Like I said, Force Awakens and Last Jedi, I was all for, and then they freaked. And then like the series, it's, you know, Mandalorian, especially season 1 of Mandalorian was amazing. Like,
I'm loving it.
Yeah.
I'm loving all seasons of it so far. But I also totally kind of empathize and can relate to where you're coming from on it too. And I think you do a good job of articulating your reasons for kind of disliking it too, which I think is good. For me, it's like, again, even the Boba Fett thing. Yeah, we'll have to do it to be continued.
We have lots of
I don't want to
future
keep you
content on Star
because I'm like,
Wars,
I could give you a
yeah.
really pretty hefty critique of the things that I liked about Boba Fett. But in general, I wouldn't say that was like Mandalorian. I would measure as a very successful show, like both seasons.
Yes. Yeah.
I think overall they've done the save the cat thing perfectly. Like, it's a perfect example of how to take just a formula and do it right.
I joked, I think at one point, it's like, I'm sure the writer's room for Mandalorian is just Star Wars figures and 4 copies of Save the Cat. Like, because that's clearly the playbook. And I have to admit, there was a point, I think about like 2/3 of the way through the first season of Mandalorian where it's like, I'm getting a little tired of like the role-playing game fetch quest thing where it's like, oh, you need like the magic stone to unlock the temple. Well, first you need to catch all my chickens that got out of their coop. Like, I mean, that was a lot of like, I was like, this is like every Mandalorian now.
Yeah.
Or it's Save the Cat where it's like something is trying to eat Grogu.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and Mando has to like save it was fine. It was starting to get a little tired to me, but then that's when it turned and it was like, now we're bringing in like, and it was like, okay, no, they knew to pull out of that.
Yeah, they have like broad stroke, like they have a broader storyline that they're pushing, but I think they do a good job of kind of maintaining a formula and doing it really effectively. And you're right, like adapting it. Whereas like yeah, Boba Fett, I would say, even though I loved it, I enjoyed it. There's a ton about it that I absolutely despise. But I would say overall, I wouldn't call it like an effective show.
No, I thought, yeah, something about it didn't.
It was sad because I like Rodriguez, you know.
Yeah, to me it was just sort of disposable. Like I just didn't, you know, I watched it. I was never bored.
Yeah.
But I can't say I was ever like, this is awesome. You know, like this is like, it was fine. It was fine. Mm-hmm. You know, like it was okay. And like, but I probably won't ever think about it again. You know, and I there's no way I'll rewatch where I can picture in a year or two rewatching Mandalorian. You know,
yeah. Yeah, I want to yeah, we'll have to get into that because there were a few things that I thought were really brilliant in that, particularly the first few episodes where they were going kind of more the Lawrence of Arabia route. That was like, to me, seemed like a stroke of genius that could have gone somewhere way cooler. but I thought that just the idea of like mixing that, bringing that into the kind of universe was a good pull. and I was
Yeah.
like, I was a little bummed they didn't go further with it because I
I
thought
did,
that
even
was a good
though
route.
I stayed with Mandalorian all the way through and enjoyed it overall all the way through. I have to say I did like the first. This is, yeah. I want everyone to calm down, preemptively. I'm going to tell them to calm down. I might have liked Mando a little bit more before they introduced Grogu. You know, because I'm a old time fan of like Man with No Name, Clint Eastwood spaghetti westerns, and that was totally what they were doing at first. Like, and I loved that. I was like, this is totally what I would want from like a weird Star Wars bounty hunter spinoff. It's like I want to see like this weird faceless Mandalorian showing up in dusty frontier towns and like getting in gunfights and stuff. Like that is awesome. Grogu came in and it became like now like let's find the Jedi thing, which I was less enthusiastic about, but it kept me with it. Like it was well done and I was liking it, but I really liked those first few episodes. The only last complaint, and again, this is another example of undermining the original movies. Mando putting his captures into carbon freeze made what happened to Han Solo a little bit less interesting. I think what was interesting about carbon freeze, you got this impression it's like, this is a crazy idea. Like Vader needs to figure out how to bring a dangerous, deadly Jedi in training all the way back to Coruscant with, how is he going to do that? It's like, we got to freeze him somehow. And he comes up with this insane idea. Like, let's just freeze him like they freeze gases on Cloud City. Like that, we'll try that and we'll test it on Solo. It was like this improvised thing, like this weird, dangerous, crazy idea. For Mando to have this is like, now this is like standard operating procedure. Like, first of all, did he learn that from Boba Fett? Or like that would have been interesting. It's like that was a pretty cool idea, and we've now learned that it worked.
Like did that travel across all the bounty hunters? Because it's like now we know this thing is effective.
Right. That's and one thing I did like about Expanded Universe back in the day was that Boba Fett hadn't even planned that. Remember, he was concerned where he's like, what if you kill him? Like, he's my bounty. Like, you put him in there, he could die. Like, I'm going to be out a lot of money. He survives. Like, Vader's like, we'll compensate you if he dies. They do it. He lives. And in the Expanded Universe, when Boba Fett takes him back to Jabba, he negotiates more money because he's like, this is art by Darth Vader. That was the pitch. It was like, look at this crazy thing that Vader did, and gets even more money out of Jabba. I loved it. Like, that is great. That's the stuff great. You keep. You don't say, like, now every bounty hunter in the galaxy is carbon freezing people in their ship. Like, I don't... you got to make this unusual. Same thing with, like, Kylo Ren being redeemed in the 11th hour. It's just, that's what's interesting is when it happens once with Anakin. It's not interesting where now this is the path of every Sith is to eventually be like, you know what, never mind. I repent on my deathbed. Can I go to Jedi heaven? That's not cool anymore. That needs to happen unusual. That needs to be an unusual, crazy thing that happened. So anyway, okay, look at this. I'm getting caught up in Star Wars. My dad's a bounty hunter. Yeah, there we go. All right, Josh, thanks for popping in.
That was fun, man. I honestly could talk Star Wars all day, so I appreciate it.
I could too, and that's why
for having me on.
Now officially pull the plug, because I'll talk Star Wars for the rest of the day, and I will not finish page 9 and get starting drawing page 10.
Yeah, so. I don't want to be the Squatch in this situation, but you got to start drawing.
The Squatch who thwarts my Squatch. It's all coming from love, buddy. All love. I appreciate my #1 fan, but if you're gonna give me a hard time, I'm gonna give you a hard time. All right. So I will see you all next week, same time, 11 a.m. Saturdays. I don't know what that's going to be. I don't know if we'll have anyone in particular on, but all I do know is I will be starting page 11 of D vs. M 1979. And in future shows, I will be slow dripping out information about what this comic is about. And I obviously I stay way clear of spoilers. I like people to have the experience of picking up a finished D vs. M and not knowing exactly where it's going to take them. But see, these are the kinds of things that do keep me up at night. Corey's going to rope me into 30 more minutes on Star Wars. I know. Seems like it's kind of a vaguely Protestant thing where it's like, look, as long as on your deathbed, you say like, you know what? I was a son of a bitch my whole life, but now I love the Force. I love the light. Like, it's all good, right? It's all good. Anakin killed kids, guys. I mean, Kylo Ren executed a whole village. Like, what? Killed his dad.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, all right. Han Solo, guys. Don't we remember Han Solo? I was fine with Han Solo being killed. I was not fine with Kylo being let off the hook because he's angsty. Because he's got emotional problems. I'm sorry. That's not a good enough excuse. But anyway, Corey, your fault that this went 4 more minutes.
Anakin loves sand. All right.
Does he love sand in the afterlife? Does he realize?
Oh wait,
like,
he hates sand. Yeah,
is that part
true.
of the whole
It's-
transition? Maybe
the
like
per-
he realized,
the perception
like, you know what?
changes.
I'm sorry, I was bad. It was wrong for me to stand by while we killed an entire planet's worth of people. In addition to all the other murder and genocide I've probably overseen over my 20 years of the Empire, like I realized, like, my bad. But also, yeah, sand's not so bad.
Sand's not that bad. Yeah.
It's all right. I was hard on sand.
Yeah.
Corey wins. All right. Guys, I love you. Work on your projects. Take care. Next time.